What a disastrous week yet again here in Washington, D.C. Leadership has teamed up with Chuck Schumer and Biden and the America Last Caucus, the Surrender Caucus, to send unlimited tax dollars overseas.
I don't care if the Speaker's office becomes a revolving door. If that's exactly what needs to happen, then let it be. And the future of our Republican Party is very bleak. When Republicans in Congress can never follow through, when Republicans in Congress put America last and countries like Ukraine first, we aren't going to have a future Republican Party, Steve. We'll never win another election because we haven't given our voters anything to vote for.
The beleaguered Republican Speaker Mike Johnson no longer has to worry about just Marjorie Taylor Greene, but instead a full open rebellion from his far-right flank, including Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Chip Roy, Thomas Massie, and others, because he finally relented and pushed through a foreign aid package that was endorsed by President Biden and the Democrats. This may be the end of Mike Johnson's speakership. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video. Clips of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Chip Roy, all the others that I mentioned in the intro. It's going to be so much fun because it's the MAGA Civil War. And seeing these delusional, incompetent Republicans fight each other rather than fight as a unified force against the American people is very fun to watch. But we do need to set the table. Here's the situation. This is from an Axios article. So conservatives corner Mike Johnson in House floor confrontation. In a tense conversation on the House floor on Thursday, a group of conservatives pressured Speaker Mike Johnson to back off potential plans to make it harder to remove House speakers. Johnson faces an imminent motion to vacate as he pushes through a foreign aid package that includes billions of dollars for Ukraine, which the far-right flank of the GOP did not want, particularly in the House. Now, as you know, when Republicans took the majority in 2023, they changed the rules, which would allow a single person to trigger a motion to vacate, which could potentially remove that particular speaker. That's what Matt Gaetz did against Kevin McCarthy, if you may recall. And that rule is still in effect. So Marjorie Taylor Greene basically put one on standby, and she's yet to pull the trigger. Thomas Massie recently said that he would second the motion. It's not looking good. So conservatives were enraged as they left the House floor on Thursday, with members saying more people are considering Marjorie Taylor Greene's campaign to oust Johnson. Matt Gaetz said Johnson would not commit to keeping the current rules, and Gaetz has been a longtime defender of Mike Johnson. Okay, that's the context for all of this. So now let's get to some of the fun clips. Lauren Boebert is still a member of the far-right Freedom Caucus, which kicked Marjorie Taylor Greene out, in large part because Greene and Boebert can't stand each other, even though they have quite a bit in common. This is what Lauren Boebert had to say about Mike Johnson's relenting to President Biden, Democrats, and sanity.
What a disastrous week yet again here in Washington, D.C., watching America get sold out. This is so discouraging. We have all of these fear over freedom tactics. But Grant, I think you and I have similar concerns. If we don't put our own country first, if we don't secure our border and get our spending under control, there's not going to be an America to stand with our allies. And unfortunately, that's not the news that we woke up to this morning. Leadership has teamed up with Chuck Schumer and Biden and the America Last Caucus, the Surrender Caucus, to send unlimited tax dollars overseas while our southern border is being overrun by criminals and is operated by the cartels.
Lauren Boebert's complaints would have much more merit to them if she weren't part of the group that deliberately and cynically killed a relatively conservative bipartisan border bill, all to help Donald Trump in an election year. So as far as I'm concerned, Republicans now own in totality whatever issues exist at the southern border. Now let's get to Lauren Boebert's long-lost twin but hated arch rival, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is very furious. We have several clips to play from her.
I don't care if the Speaker's office becomes a revolving door. If that's exactly what needs to happen, then let it be. But the days are over of the old Republican Party that wants to fund foreign wars and murder people in foreign lands while they stab the American people in their face and refuse to protect Americans and fix our problems.
Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene was part of the movement to defang that border bill, again, in order to make it a wedge issue. So she doesn't have much credibility there. In these other clips, though, she also has some really great things to say about the Republican Party that hopefully the President Biden's campaign and Democratic campaigns and operatives across the country will make use of in campaign ads.
And the future of our Republican Party is very bleak when Republicans in Congress can never follow through, when Republicans in Congress put America last and countries like Ukraine first. We aren't going to have a future Republican Party, Steve. We'll never win another election because we haven't given our voters anything to vote for.
If there is any justice in the universe, that's absolutely the case. The Republican Party never should win another election, right? I mean, they're on the losing issue the losing side of the vast majority of specific policy issues, even if their rhetoric is really effective. And this has been the past, year and a half, and it would be almost 2 years by the time of the election, have been just a telling masterclass of what the Republican Party will do if they get the levers of power. Republicans have been in control of the House of Representatives since January 2023. What the hell have they done with that power? Tried and failed to impeach President Biden, tried and failed to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, which was such an abject humiliation. It merits its own video. We probably will pull that one out too. But yeah, if there's any justice, Republicans wouldn't win an election.
Giving aid and comfort to your enemies. That is treason. So this entire foreign aid bill, by definition of our laws and our Constitution, is committing treason by doing so. But when you talk about the border, this government is in a partnership with the cartels, Steve, the cartels that are committing human trafficking, drug trafficking, and murdering Americans every single day, every day. Their drugs and their illegal alien crime is murdering Americans.
So again, as we've discussed, Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene did Trump's bidding, killed that bipartisan border bill. They're also sitting on supplemental funding requests, which are preventing high-tech fentanyl drug detecting machines from being deployed at the border because Republicans won't fund them. So again, as far as I'm concerned, this is a matter of Democrats just telling the truth about what Republicans are doing. Republicans are deliberately getting Americans killed from drugs coming in from the southern border or from fentanyl overdoses because they won't fund the high-tech fentanyl detecting machines, all to help Donald Trump politically in an election year and hurt President Biden. That's on them. Republicans are killers in that respect. But it's not, again, just Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. It's also the likes of Matt Gaetz, Chip Roy, and others. So I have some more clips to play.
For hours last night and proposed different paths for the speaker that would have avoided the abject surrender represented by his strategic choice here. There's no other way to describe it. It's surrender. It's disappointing. I won't support it.
It's disappointing. It's completely detached from what our base wants, what our voters want.
The strategy is not to try. I think the strategy is to fall on his sword.
Now, again, I have no sympathy for Mike Johnson. He's awful. He's an idiot. Let me play this clip from Chip Roy. It's about 8 seconds, and then I'll give my final thoughts on the whole thing.
Disappointed are you with the speaker?
Very. I'm well past the point of giving grace here.
Okay, so again, the list goes on and on and on. The deranged far-right Republicans in the House Republican Conference, and let's be fair, most of them are deranged and far-right, so it's hard to sort them out, relatively speaking, on this issue. But the more crazy ones, or the crazier ones, just don't understand the math of the situation. Mike Johnson bending the knee here, which he effectively has, and honestly, quite frankly, that's also how it should be pitched. Democrats should not be, praising Johnson in any way. They should not be even implicitly suggesting that Mike Johnson was doing the reasonable thing here. Mike Johnson engaged in delay tactics to try to appease his unappeasable base. He helped create the situation. He helped exacerbate the situation. He didn't lead. He didn't say, folks, this is what we've got to do. The math doesn't change, and I'm going to do it come hell or high water. He dragged this out to the potential detriment of the Ukrainian resistance against Russia. And he's potentially going to suffer the political consequences again, regardless. So he's basically in the same situation that Kevin McCarthy was in, right? Kevin McCarthy basically did the same thing over government funding, which is he made a deal with President Biden during the debt ceiling negotiations in May of 2023. And then he reneged on the deal. This is McCarthy. But then in a roundabout way, bent the knee at the last moment with a continuing resolution. It wasn't the full budget to which they agreed, but it was like a stopgap measure at the budgetary levels that he agreed with the president. So he kind of broke his word, but then went halfway there in the first at the end because there was no other way to go. And Johnson's in the same position. He doesn't have the leverage to dictate terms to the president or to the other chamber of Congress. He just doesn't have it. He can't be the tail that wags the dog. And that's what Thomas Massie, Chip Roy, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Matt Gaetz genuinely seem to believe that he could be. That if they just get the right speaker in, they can assume the levers of power, they can dictate terms, but they can't. They don't have the margin for it, and they barely control, one chamber of one branch of government. So Mike Johnson is finding himself inevitably in the position that any Republican speaker would find themselves. And it's an election year. So the longer that the Republicans continue to step on rakes and demonstrate that they can't govern because they're too stupid and dysfunctional to do it, the greater the likelihood that that costs them, some sort of political victory in November of this year, which hopefully is exactly what will happen. Because again, Democrats should make it abundantly clear that this is just an example of what happens when you let the Republicans run anything other than a lemonade stand. So it seems like the Civil War continues, and Mike Johnson's, or rather the clock on Mike Johnson's job is well and truly started. The final countdown begins. Let me know what you think in the comments.